Hey, everybody, welcome to the Jim Acosta Show. And it's another day that ends in Y in Trump's assault on American democracy. Today, he even said a lot of people in America want a dictator. So there it is, out in the open, everybody. My big guest today, there he is, my old pal, John Avlon, my old partner in crime from my old place. John, great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I was thinking back to some of our early campaign trips together to South Carolina for a primary, probably 2012, maybe even
Oh, my
before that.
gosh. That's a long time ago. Are we that old?
I refuse to accept it. You've got, I think you're Cuban of descent. I've got some Greek genes going on. I don't know. We're
There
gonna
you
keep it
go.
going.
Very good. He's got his join or die mug there. He's
Hell
feeling
yeah.
very revolutionary. I remember when it was the Trump people who thought it was fashionable to say it's 1776 all over again. I don't know. Maybe folks who care about democracy need to say it's 1776 all over again. John, I mean, you wrote this amazing Substack today. It was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to get you going. But, there's a lot going on. I mean, the National Guard carrying weapons now in Washington, D.C., that's been authorized. That has begun. I was going up and down 14th Street, which is a popular spot here in D.C. over the weekend. And, they had National Guard soldiers stationed outside of La Diplomat, of all places. Our baguettes are safe, ladies and gentlemen. We don't need the National Guard here. But it is something different, John, when you see National Guard troops carrying weapons in the nation's capital for really no goddamn reason. I mean, yes, there's crime in D.C. There's crime in lots of cities, also a lot of cities in red states.
Yeah.
But I want to jump into your Substack in just a moment. But your thoughts, you called it a doom scroll summer, that folks are in a doom scroll summer right now. But there's some real serious stuff going on. Your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's incredibly serious, and I think armed troops in the streets of our capital is a leading indicator. The reason I call it doom scroll summer is because I think we're all caught between our lives as we've known them, and yet the knowledge sometimes that people are trying to force into the periphery of their vision that things are changing in dangerous ways for our democracy. And I think armed troops in the Capitol is a perfect image of that. DC has crime, but crime is actually down. This is not an emergency. This is a show of force. And this is about acclimating people to what would have previously been unacceptable. And what if a Democratic president do it? Because constitutional conservatives would be up in arms. But the ways in which hyperpartisanship, which is a hell of a drug, causes people to flip their positions, to put principles aside in the pursuit of partisan power is truly dangerous. It's something the founders warned about, and we should reclaim the flag. We should reclaim American history because we need it now, frankly, more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are heading towards maybe a bit of our own 1776 moment. I mean, people can say, "Oh, that sounds hyperbolic." I mean, you write this in your Substack, John. It says, "I am defiantly optimistic by nature, but this will go nowhere good in the short run. We will see a compounding of polarization. We will see, combined with accelerated distrust of the ideas and ideals which have been the foundation of American exceptionalism. We can talk about the feedback loop of our politics, nurture our respective grievances, and use them as narcotics to ignore the larger principles under assault. But know this, our autocratic adversaries," I think that's very important that you said that, "our autocratic adversaries are encouraged by democracy's division and dysfunction." And John, to that point, listen to something that Trump said earlier today. He was talking about dictators, and he said, maybe folks want a dictator in this country. Let's listen to that.
As you all know, Chicago is a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense, and I'm a smart person.
A very stable genius, John.
Yes, as always. Some people are saying that
Some people are saying.
we ought to have a dictator. Look, America was founded on a rejection of a king, of dictator. That is fundamental to our democracy. But I think part of what we got to wake the hell up about is a reminder that democracy has not been history's norm. Far from it, right? I mean, even I'm writing a book now on Teddy Roosevelt and his farewell address. Not his. I read a book on Washington's farewell address earlier, on his Man in the Arena speech, and he gives it in Paris in 1910. And at that time, the United States and Paris were the only two major nations to not have kings. They were constitutional republics. And so this reacclimation, the ways in which I believe that the struggle of our times is democracy versus autocracy, but the autocrats have tried to undermine our democracy, something Washington and the founders warned about. Foreign powers trying to interfere in our domestic politics. They want to reduce people's faith in our democracy. And when folks start putting party over principle, they play into those hands. You see this sense of, well, maybe democracy is optional. Maybe it's been discredited. See, we're divisive and dysfunctional. That's always the autocrat's pitch, right? That anarchy is the quickest path to tyranny, and that's because that's a pretext often that autocrats use to try to gain power. And we need to really rediscover and straighten our civic backbone right now, and we can do it by directly building on and associating ourselves with those founding principles. Patriotic thing to do. It's important that we are the patriots in this. And I think there are going to be a lot of moments, including Ken Burns' documentary coming out in September about the American Revolution, for people to reconnect to our history, not in a spirit of cynicism or having fallen from great heights, but as a way of redoubling our commitment to that ideal, defiantly optimistic in the face of all the difficulties we're facing, because they're freaking real.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, the FBI, the DOJ, they raided John Bolton's place. What was it, last Friday?
Yep.
Today he was talking about maybe going after Chris Christie. I mean, this is serious stuff, and he's talking about going after Chris Christie on Bridgegate of all things. So he's just going to go after whatever he thinks is the low hanging fruit and cook up a rationale to raid somebody's place. And when he was talking about it in the Oval Office earlier today, he was saying, "Oh, well, my place was raided, Mar-a-Lago was raided." So this is the revenge and retribution tour.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And it's what he promised. It was part of the stakes of the last election, which is why I left our former news organization to run for Congress, because I didn't want to talk about it on TV. I thought the stakes were so high for our country. We've done ourselves a great disservice in the eyes of history by rewarding someone who tried to overthrow an election that led to an assault on our Capitol. And now he's doing exactly what was totally predictable, which in effect he promised, which is going on a revenge bender. And that's totally characteristic of him. You talk to people who served in the first Trump administration. He's a man motivated primarily of grievance. But now with the Supreme Court having removed some of the guardrails around presidents in the past, he feels totally unencumbered to do what dictators around the world do. This is third world sort of banana republic stuff. And I wish I saw more Republicans speaking up on principle, but instead they seem to have discarded everything they've spent most of the last several decades, plural, warning about, whether it's Milton Friedman or the importance of rooting yourself in the Constitution. Owning the libs is the only sort of animating force that seems to unite it, but that's no basis for a government, and it's incredibly dangerous for our democracy, in particular right now.
Yeah, we just saw a viewer comment saying, he's just throwing out whatever he can and sees what sticks. I think that's part of it. I think, I was sort of tempted to write off a lot of this stuff as, these are distractions from the Epstein files and so on. But it's all heading in one direction. It's all heading in the direction of authoritarianism. It's all heading in the direction of autocracy, John. And the thing that concerns me is he is sort of wearing down our outrage censors. And he's conditioning young people in this country to accept, that it's okay to just send the FBI or have the FBI go out and raid the home of one of your political opponents. It's just not how we do things in this country. But the thing that you touched on, I think, is so and I do want to talk about your run for Congress, if you don't mind me asking a little bit about it.
No, happy to.
A second or two. But you did touch on, I think, what is the ultimate problem here. And we're going to see this play out in about a week or so when Republicans in Congress get back to Washington. I mean, we talk about profiles in courage and profiles in cowardice. This is not even cowardice. This is just subjugation. This is just, raising the white flag. There's just nothing. There's no balls. There's no spine. There's nothing. They're like slaves to him. What has happened?
It is the self-castration of Congress in a way that the founders never imagined, right? When Madison puts together our system, it's ambition must be made to counteract ambition. It's checks and balances. He never imagined that a whole constitutional branch of government, a co-equal branch, would effectively give away its power. And I think it speaks to the enduring power of fear and greed, those old biblical enemies that have come galloping back, and that Trump knows how to use those levers very effectively.
Yeah.
But it's worse than cowardice, right? They're not victims. They're willing
Right.
enablers out of fear of losing a close partisan primary, out of greed for power. It just the fear of being cast out from your in group. And what kills me is that when you get people who declare who decide they're not going to run again because they're going to lose a close partisan primary, they could have run
Right.
as an independent and shown some spine. Hopefully more people will do that, particularly on the Republican side of the aisle. But then they're not totally liberated. They end up voting for things that and just enabling the autocratic shift when that's the reason, their stated reason for leaving.
Yeah.
So it is a dangerous time. We've seen no spine, no backbone. Certainly, Democrats got to get their own house in order. But this is when we read history and we look back and we say, how could that happen? Well, I
Yeah.
think now we know, and that's up to us. We have a special responsibility because it's happening in real time on our watch to counteract that.
Yeah, and John, I wonder if it's even worse than this. I wonder if the Republican Party has mutated into an autocratic or authoritarian party. And yes, a lot of it is because of spinelessness and because they've been castrated. They're sort of like that character Reek from is it Reek? Is that what it was from Game of Thrones?
I've never been a Game of Thrones.
I think
My wife is more of a Game of Thrones person than I am, so I'll defer to her on that.
we need a
for you.
full Hoovalon to fact check that. But
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I mean, but I wonder if part of it is that they have, I think, perhaps become entranced with the idea of being an autocratic country. And they would rather have a permanent minority rule in this country. I mean, just today, Trump said that the Justice Department plans to sue California over their attempt to redraw the state's congressional maps, because the Republicans are doing it in Texas. California followed suit, and to me, how can that be okay? Like we're just going to allow the Republican states to redraw their maps. And I don't see any of these members of Congress stopping. And I wonder if it's because they have become autocrats.
Well, I
some of them.
You certainly have seen. I mean, let's look. I'm a history nerd, so let's pull back for a second, right? I mean,
please.
The party labels are not the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when the Republican Party is founded in the late 1850s, and Lincoln is its first successful candidate in 1860, and I wrote a book called Lincoln and the Fight for Peace, where I got into some of this. It's a moderate progressive party dedicated to stopping the expansion of slavery. Right. And the Democrats at the time were conservative populists. And they were, by the way, like a breakaway third party at that particular time. The conservative populists tend to have sort of over our country's history, a gravitational pull towards a blood and soil version of nationalism, which is different than patriotism. Right. It's rooted in states' rights, tribal identities, racial rights, and it's inherently exclusionary. The Republican Party of Lincoln then, becomes the Republican Party of Theodore Roosevelt. It's very big business oriented, but it's still, and Roosevelt is very much a progressive. He's a patriotic progressive towards the end of his career.
Right.
And then, you've got the Eisenhower mid-century. You've got the ideas and ideals of Herbert Hoover, which, bias alert because of my bride.
Right.
And even through Reagan, you have the modern conservative movement, and it's very focused on free ideas and free people, right? And it's about expanding that vision of freedom and democracy around the world. It's about free markets, Milton Friedman, free trade. This is the opposite of that. And the fact that so many folks who've been brought up with this kind of catechism have abandoned it so quickly to fall in line with Donald Trump because he has such a hold on the base, I think does betray something that has gone terribly wrong within the conservative populist base of the Republican Party, that it is a blood and soil nationalism, as well as sort of an impulse to own the libs that's being aided by algorithms in many cases, and decreasing faith in democracy. So it's a total flip in terms of what it meant, not that long ago, if you were taking folks their word and being a constitutional conservative. Now, if you look at the backlash to Obama, and you remember my book Wingnuts around that time, based on my reporting, it was clear the backlash to Obama, you go interview people at those early rallies, was not actually about taxes or the deficit or the debt. It was about national identity and the ways
Yeah.
that folks felt threatened. And that was true in my reporting and the interviews and a lot of subsequent surveys. So I think we're reaping what they have sown. But it does
Yeah.
lead to say, let's rig a map. Right, we don't like the
Yeah.
demographic trends. Let's rig the maps and then try to sue people who respond in kind. It's very, very dangerous, and it will only lead to more polarization. And my belief is that
Yeah.
hyperpartisanship and polarization is the great danger to democracy. It always has been, and we're on a very dangerous path.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And when I talk to particularly college student groups, that sort of thing, the number one thing that they're worried about is hyperpartisanship and polarization.
Good.
And that gives me some hope for the future. The problem is, in the meantime, you have some folks who are just simply swept up in this MAGA movement, and a lot of them probably have been turned off since the 2024 election. I suspect that that's the case, but I don't know if
Certainly
enough of them have.
independents.
Yeah, certainly independents. Yeah.
I mean, that's something hopeful for people to hold on to. And I think
Yeah.
the great danger is that there's a concerted attempt to make the public square so indecent that no normal person wants to get involved. Right.
Yeah.
And that just seeds the ground to the crazies.
Yeah.
And politics follows the lines of physics so that you get equal and opposite reactions. But I don't want to get into the one hand and the other, because we got asymmetric polarization in this country. What we're seeing right now is an unprecedented power grab. It is destroying
That's right.
guardrails and democratic norms very intentionally. And
And they're talking about, John, he is talking about sending more National Guard to other cities, Baltimore, Chicago. He was saying some nutty stuff earlier today in the Oval Office where he was saying, well, all of the cities with the worst crime are in blue states. That's just, first of all, that's just bullshit.
Not true.
It's not true. And I've been saying on this show, remember when I used to be at the White House and I would say, fact check, not true. In fact, fact check, false. And we would fact check him. And the fact checker at the Washington Post would say half true. That's false. I'm sort of over this idea that we should fact check him all the time, because he's just completely full of shit and he's just going to lie constantly. And there's just
30,000 lies in the first term, according to the Washington Post.
Yeah. And my sense of it is that right now, what we just need is a concerted effort to stop him from trying to turn this into a dictatorship and from becoming an autocrat. And I think I think he's doing that. That's my read on it. That's what
look, I mean, it's not, but I think I appreciate the caveat. It was one man's opinion, but on the other hand, that this was part of the stakes of the last election, right?
That's true.
They kept quoting approvingly Viktor Orban. In the Republican National Convention, they quoted Viktor Orban, and it was like, it barely made a ripple. But like, they're telling you, when people tell you who they are,
Trump said, "I'll be a dictator on day one."
On day one, and they're very clearly pursuing kind of an Orban agenda. This is someone they have admired, someone they have elevated, and they are pursuing that particular playbook. And so that's what we're dealing with, and that's one of the reasons why I say, when they sort of overwhelm us with the onslaught, it's important to take a step back and say, connect these dots, and you'll see we're going no place good. And if you are enabling it, if you're excusing it, you own it. Right, you're responsible for it. Yeah. And the reason I've been focused in this podcast, I do a podcast for the Bulwark called "How to Fix It." It's just about solutions, and usually bipartisan centrist solutions, because that's where I'm coming from. But we do need to be talking more about solutions. We do need to be talking more about concrete things, because if it's just, we need to be warning, but we can't be whinging. Right. We need to be actually saying there's a different way, there's a better way, and recognize, though, that we're dealing with something uniquely dangerous in our history that we don't have a lot of precedent for.
Well, no, that's true. And speaking of how to fix things, I want to talk about your run for Congress, if that's okay, because, I thought it was terrific that you went out there and did it. And it took a lot of guts, and especially to try to win in a traditionally Republican district, or a district that's been pretty Republican for a long time. And you didn't win, but I thought it was just a very courageous thing that you did. And it is something that I would like to see a lot more of. But the question that I have, John, is, were you welcomed with open arms in the Democratic Party? And do you see, is there enough of that? Because we would say, oh, we need fresh candidates. We need new people to go out there. And I say this all the time on my show. We need fresh legs and fresh ideas, fresh faces, and so on. But then there are folks who say, well, the Democratic Party doesn't want that. They want to run the party people, and people have been waiting their turn, or the same incumbent over and over again, no matter how old they are.
So my experience was very different and very good in that regard.
Yeah.
First of all, I loved running. I got energy from it.
Yeah.
I did get in because I felt I didn't want to talk about it on TV. I felt the stakes were too high, and I wanted to do what I could to help. And that meant, trying to flip the seat, which is, sort of a reddish purple, right?
Yeah.
I felt, it's where we could do the most good. Some Democrats tried to discourage me by saying that there was a former party nominee, a woman who was decidedly to my left, who would be sort of the prohibitive favorite in the primary and was a self-funder. Now, she had trailed the Biden in 2020 by just shy of 10 points. I think it was 8 points, and so I said that's just a recipe for losing. I'm going to run into the breach. And look, I as a journalist, as an independent for many years, I'd worked for Rudy Giuliani when he was mayor, back when Rudy was saying during 9/11. That helped me with some people and hurt me with others, but we ended up winning the primary by 40 points.
Wow.
I mean, a huge margin. And so I did feel absolutely embraced. I think the biggest challenge was then, you need to sort of start from zero in the fundraising. Trump ended up, outperforming polls by, we thought Kamala was up 1 in the district in the 2-week pre-election poll. Trump ended up winning, the district by 12. We ran ahead of the top of the ticket, won more Democratic votes, but won more votes than any Democrat in our district's history. Actually had more votes out of here in the first district than any district in New York State, but it was just a tough cycle. Independents and undecideds broke hard for Trump. So even though we won 8% of Republicans, it was a really, really tough cycle, huge erosion from Biden's numbers in 2020. And I think that's about a lot of things. There's a lot of learnings.
I was going to say, what did you see? What was it? What was it? The affordability? Was it inflation? Was it
those two things are directly connected, right?
Yeah,
the campaign hammered home to me even more than before that I think the fundamental issue is the middle class squeeze that's been going on for decades. People are frustrated and pissed off that they can work hard, play by the rules, and not get ahead. And inflation is insult to injury in that.
Yeah.
So one of the core slogans of my campaign was rebuild the middle. And what I'd say is, like, it's not a coincidence that we hollowed out the middle of our politics at the same time we hollowed out the middle of our economy. Those two things are connected. So we got to rebuild the middle of our economy to rebuild the middle of our politics. I do think that Democrats and polling, would say, look, Roe v. Wade just got taken away. That should be a hugely galvanizing issue in a district that's, 80% pro-choice or more. But, there's real frustration with a porous border, with the migrant crisis. And for a lot of folks, it's rooted just in a sense of fairness, that, the companies that are breaking the rules and undercutting, that it didn't seem fair. It didn't seem fair. When I knock on doors, I'd hear this a lot. Why are the migrants getting the debit cards and I'm struggling to keep my head above water? I think it's the economy's stupid. It's about rebuilding the middle class, and doing that in a really, concrete way. But look, I thought Trump had the worst close I'd ever seen. I thought Kamala Harris kicked his ass in the debate, unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter at the end of the day. No, and I do think, but there are a lot of learnings. I think the catalyst analysis of the election is really interesting. Democrats got to do a better job reconnecting with independent voters. That's why I think the fact that Trump is tanking with independents is really significant.
Yeah, but you look at the polling and it shows that as a brand, the Democratic Party is not doing well right now.
That's the thing. That's the thing,
and they're not capitalizing because they're perceived as not fighting hard enough. And there are members who will say, "Well, I'm fighting my ass off," and there are some real spirited folks out there in the party. But the perception is, as a whole, the party is just sort of milquetoast and not doing enough and lame.
That's not necessarily my read, although that's part of it. People want a fighter, that's for sure. and I'm a fighting centrist, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which this is a matter of conviction for me, which I know.
It's that Greek blood you were mentioning.
There you go. But it's what I've always believed. Like, we are going to need to find a way to reunite
Yeah.
as a nation, and you need to do that from a position of strength, not weakness. That means willing to take on the fight and get in the fight.
Yeah.
But I do think that the brand damage for the Democratic Party is deeper than that. Obviously, Biden's age
Yeah.
hurt, even though I thought he was an effective, consequential president. I think the inability to implement a lot of the things that were done is something, you could quibble with the phrase "the abundance agenda," but the idea of making sure that we're streamlining regulations so we can actually get things done, so democracy can deliver for people in ways that they can see and feel, we can get back building again. I think that matters. I think
Yeah.
identity politics has been really destructive to the Democratic Party. It didn't help. I mean, Donald Trump gained ground in communities of color. So a lot of the sort of tiptoeing around for fear of offending didn't actually help Democrats, because it made them seem inauthentic. And it didn't resonate in a common sense way. So I think there's plenty of reassessment. I strongly believe that the center left should be a position of strength that we play offense on, not simply defend a stale status quo. I think that's another problem.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned about the feedback loop we're in. But there's no question that's what's coming from the federal government, and the way that the center right is for the most part folded to Donald Trump is a
There's no
disgrace and a
question.
danger.
Yeah. And these independents, they may sort of float back and forth, is my sense of it. And they're going to decide these upcoming election cycles.
For sure.
And the Democrats better get their A game going, because, we could end up in a situation where Trump is able to claw these 5 congressional seats in his column, and it could be really tough in this next
It's not
midterm
just
cycle.
those 5. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the brand,
Yeah.
to your point, the Democratic brand should be benefiting from Trump cratering.
It should.
It's not. So that's a real warning sign. There needs to be,
Yeah.
and this isn't about hiring, multi-billion-dollar consultants to figure out how you can talk to young men. Like, that shouldn't be necessary, right?
Yeah.
Play offense, reach out, figure out, how you can win over the reasonable edge of the opposition while keeping the base fired up. It is about 2 things: authenticity and affordability. I think that's one of the few common ground lessons of Mamdani's victory. But look what Abigail
Yeah.
Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill. I think those folks should be the face of the Democratic Party in this cycle in 25.
Yeah.
Not just the other debates sucking up all the oxygen. But
I think they will be. I will say, though, in
we'll
Virginia,
see.
because I'm in the DC
Tell me, yeah.
market.
Tell me.
Spanberger's already starting to run negative ads aimed at Winsome Sears. There's some initial polling that shows that race is a little tighter than the Democrats would like. And I would be shocked, absolutely, because Winsome Sears is a total nut, and she's just totally far off, the deep end in terms of being far right. But the fact that the Democrats are having to have a battle here tells me something.
Sure.
Mikey Sherrill, I don't think we'll have that kind of trouble in New Jersey.
Nope. Pay closer attention in New Jersey.
Interesting.
Phil Murphy had a very close re-election. He shouldn't have. Trump made his biggest per capita gains in New York and New Jersey. I'm talking like in some congressional districts, a 20-point swing.
Yeah.
So Jersey is not, don't sleep on any of these races.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just making the point that I think, Mikey Sherrill and Spanberger haven't gotten nearly the attention that Mamdani did. And
they really should.
He won a closed partisan Democratic primary with less than 10% of the vote. But understanding,
but I think, isn't it also, John,
damage,
I don't mean to interrupt, but isn't it also that Democrats are, and I try to give people pep talks and say, you got to fight for this, man. You can't take this lying down. This guy putting the National Guard with weapons in the nation's capital. I can't take that lying down. I think people are deflated. I think people are dejected. I think they feel defeated. I think they are still in a daze. A little bit punchy. That this guy's in there.
We did something that, in the eyes of history, will be civically incomprehensible.
Yes,
if not unforgivable. Right? I was nerding out on Ryan Holiday's books are great. I read them a lot. The Stoicism books and the ancient Greek roots of democracy, coming up a little bit in the research I'm doing for my current book. And there was an ancient Greek Athenian leader named Solon, who was sort of task in a time of deep division, because the economic divisions also are great dangers to any republic or democracy or any country over time. And the one thing he forgave in sort of a spate of reconciliation and rewriting the city-state's constitution, the one thing he wouldn't forgive was people who tried to overthrow the government. Those are the only folks who
Yes.
didn't get to come back. And so we did something truly, I think, dangerous. And I understand why people are dazed. I thought it was a moral impossibility that Donald Trump would win more
Me
votes
too.
than he did.
That's right.
And so we have to deal with that. And for me, the galvanizing thing is, and I've written a lot about this, and I'm going to stay very focused on this. We need to be animating people with a positive ideal, not just opposition. So it's not just solutions. So I think we need to be focused on how we are going to strengthen American democracy for the 21st century in a whole of government effort.
Yeah.
It's political reforms, it's economic reforms, it's cultural, reforms. We need to really think about how we reunite our nation and restore the guardrails around our democracy, and to take the energy around the 250 and not simply despair that we did reelected Donald Trump, but what are we going to redeem from this? Because you can't give up on our country, you can't give up on our kids. We got to do a better job. So we got to find great animating goals to rally around.
Totally. Yeah, we're gonna have to dig deep. There's no question about it.
Yeah, man.
John, it's great to see you. Let's keep doing this. I have a feeling you
Anytime,
and I
my
could
man.
just keep talking for hours here, but
We can nerd out for a long time. Our country's worth it. Anyway,
And great-
it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
And best of luck on the TR book. I love that you're writing about Teddy Roosevelt.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, you're going to have a blast doing that. And still America's youngest president, right? He's still
He ascended the presidency at 42.
42 years old.
Yeah,
He was a
it was
badass.
crazy. It was like 4 years after he charges up San Juan Hill. It was very crowded hours in his life. But
Can't wait to read it.
Human.
Can't wait to
All
read
right,
it.
man.
Good to see you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, pal.
All right, great. John Avlon, student of history, student of our politics, and somebody who I think, gosh, would have just made a huge difference in the halls of Congress. We don't always elect the best people. We don't always send our best. Because if we did, we would have sent a John Avlon up to Capitol Hill. And I think he would, I'd love to see him give that another go. My thanks to John Avlon. Really appreciate everybody for watching. I do want to brag on the show real quick before we go. Our episode with Heather Cox Richardson is approaching about 500,000 viewers if you add up Substack and YouTube. We got about 350,000 viewers on YouTube. If you want to support this show, become a subscriber. And if you're watching this on Substack, also we want to make you a subscriber, but we hit a lot of subscriptions over the weekend. And I believe on Substack, we're well over 100,000 viewers on Substack, which is just terrific. And so this is, be sure to subscribe. It matters. It shows that you support independent media. Folks, you are not going to find our friends in the corporate media telling Donald Trump that we're not going to take his shit lying down. We're not going to take his dictator shit lying down. That only happens on independent media. And, Dave was, our friend Dave Ehrenberg was saying, Jim, you use colorful language. You're damn right I do. Because the moment calls for it. So keep on subscribing, keep on supporting this show, keep on supporting shows like ours, keep on supporting independent media. We are here to hold this administration accountable. We are here to say what needs to be said. We're not going to be pushed around by a wannabe dictator. We're not going to be bullied by a wannabe dictator. It's about we the people. And with that, thanks everybody for watching. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. Have a good evening. Good night. Thanks for watching.